Hello you guys, welcome back to my channel. My name's Jess and I'm very excited today to talk to you guys about my reading wrap up and what I'm hoping to read in the next month. I haven't fully come up with my TBR, but we'll kind of work through it together. I just wanted to start off by saying I apologize because the last few videos I just haven't had a chance to upload yet. I had to go to the doctor and everything is totally fine, but I think I got in my head a little bit about some of the stuff, and so I just needed a week break, but I'm excited to come back and I still have those videos, so I will be sharing them with you soon. So you guys will actually see me reading the books that I'm talking about in this video in upcoming videos as well. Again, I apologize that it's a little backwards, but I did film them and I don't want to just like toss those videos either. So those will be upcoming in the next week. But in the meantime, I did want to talk to you guys about the books that I read this month, well, last month in July. Actually, let me pull up what my original TBR was. I think I did an okay job. So my original TBR was to read The Summer Will Be Different, Reckless, Part of Your World, The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, and the third housemaid book, which is called The Housemaid is Watching. So I read a total of 8 books over the month of July, but I only read 3 on my actual TBR. So we're gonna get right into it. Before we do though, if you guys are interested in more book content and like vlogs, things like that, please consider subscribing if you're new here. And if not, welcome back. So jumping right in to everything that I read last month. The first book that I read was The Housemaid is Watching, which is, like I mentioned, the third in the Housemaid series. I ended up giving this one 4 stars. I really felt like I really enjoyed the first Housemaid book. The second one was a lot of the same of what the first one was. And so I was excited that this third Housemaid book was not the same. It was 10 or 20 years later. I think it was 10 years later. And just showing the main character in a very different life, which I enjoyed. I think that it was nice to not have the exact same story over and over again. So if you guys don't already know what the whole series is about, it's about a girl, her name is Millie, and she is a housemaid for a family and things are just a little weird. She has a really small room that only locks from the outside and she just suspects that something weird is going on in the house and like with the family. That's sort of the premise of the first book. The second book follows something very similar. In the third book, Millie is now married and she has children and kind of goes into a little bit of similar topics, but not quite the same. I will say that I do think that you should check any kind of trigger warnings for this book. There were just a few things that I could see being a little too much if that was something in particular that you were not comfortable with reading, but otherwise I enjoyed the book. I think the first part of it was a little difficult for me only because I've noticed that the author recaps a lot of her paragraphs or her chapters. Her chapters are very short and the internal monologue is a little strange, and so it kind of took me out of the story at first, but then once the story started to pick up, I didn't really notice that nearly as much. It was still happening, but I was so invested in the story that I didn't even notice it. I did enjoy the ending and like the twist that Frida McFadden is very known for, and I think, I don't know, I just felt like it wasn't quite a 5-star. Like there were definitely points where I was like, okay, I kind of want to read something else. So that's what made it not a 5-star for me. But I really enjoyed the book overall and I still read it incredibly fast, which I do for most Frida McFadden books. So I really liked it overall. So I gave it 4 stars. Last thing I'll say on that book, I think it was a really good wrap up to the whole series. So that was really nice. But anyway, getting back into the rest of them, the next book was Reckless, which is the second in the Powerless trilogy. It is technically a trilogy, but there are a few other books. So it goes Powerless, then Powerful is a novella, then Reckless. There will be a novella after Reckless, and then it will be the third book. Don't know if there's going to be a novella after that. I read the novella and I think I ended up giving it 5 stars because originally I was going to give it 4 stars just because I wanted a little more time with the characters, but I decided on giving it 5 stars because the story itself was just so beautiful and just I got to know the characters a little bit more, which I really enjoyed. So I did give that one 5 stars, but Reckless I gave 4 stars only because I felt like it was very much trying to bridge the gap between what the first book was and what the third book will be, and that's just how it works sometimes. But this book in particular, I just felt like it was a little bit repetitive. I was very excited to be back in the world that we were in and back with the characters, and I truthfully didn't see the ending coming. I think a lot of people, now that I've like seen other people review it, did see that ending coming, but I had an inkling of like what was happening, and then when it actually happened, I was like, oh my God, that's what's going on. So I did enjoy that ending a lot because I just wasn't expecting it at all. So I did like that. But overall, I think it was just a 4-star. I really, really enjoyed the first one, and I'm very excited for the last one. But again, I just feel like, I don't know, I feel like it could have been a little bit better. I don't think it needed to be as repetitive as it was, and there are a few things that maybe we could have changed to make it a 5-star, but I still enjoyed it. The next one was my book club book for this month, which was This Summer Will Be Different by Carly Fortune. I was a little nervous to read this one because I really liked, I forget what her first book is called. Every Summer After, that's what it is. I really like that one, although I've heard a lot of people say, and I agree, that it is very similar to Love in Other Words. And I've heard really negative things about Meet Me at the Lake. So I finally decided to pick this one up, and this was again our book club book for the month. And I enjoyed it. I again was nervous because I had heard someone else talk about how this was very similar to a different book that she really enjoyed. She didn't name what book it was, so I couldn't quite pick up on what she was seeing, or maybe I just haven't read the book that she's talking about. But it very much reminded me of People We Meet on Vacation or The Summer I Turned Pretty. I think it, for me, felt like a mix of those two books, and I really enjoyed it. I think it had a mix of like very summery vibes and trying to deduce what had happened summers ago and slowly learning information from the characters. I think there were some pieces that just made it not a 5-star for me. I gave this one 4 stars, but there were a lot of things that like made them more people-like not storybook characters. But I don't know, like part of me was like, I kind of wanted like something to happen a little bit sooner because that would have been better for the book, but it's how real people would have reacted. So I can't decide if that's like a good thing or a bad thing, but overall it was really good, but I didn't like feel like I wanted to stay up till 2 a.m. reading it. So I gave it 4 stars. Last thing on that one too, I think after reading that one and enjoying it and also enjoying Every Summer After, I might give Meet Me at the Lake a chance. Again, I've heard a lot of people say bad things about it, but I feel like I have to try it for myself at this point, so I may give that one a chance. The next one that I read was Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis, and I have had this one on my TBR for so long. I finally got a chance to read it because someone at work actually told me that I should listen to it as an audiobook, and she was just telling me about how much she loved it and how she was thinking of me when she listened to it, and so I was like, you know what, let me just do it. Someone else that I know had read it and didn't really like it, so that's what was sort of like leading me to not want to read it, and I am so glad I listened to it as an audiobook. I literally felt so much emotion toward this book. I gave it 5 stars. This one is about a woman who is a scientist. She's specifically a chemist, and she falls in love with another chemist and just kind of talks about their life together, but also talks about just like what it was like to be a woman in the 1960s and just all of the things that she had to go through in the time of like not really recognizing women in the science fields. And I just found it so empowering and so, I don't know, just interesting. At the end of the audiobook, they also have an interview with the author, and she talks about how she came up with the character originally and just like the character's daughter and things like that too. And I just felt like all of it was just like so exciting and smart and just so much more perspective on like what the times were like. It made me start thinking about like, oh, I wonder if my mom felt this way when she was doing these things. And I don't know, just like really got me thinking, I guess. So for that reason, I gave it 5 stars. I found that because I listened to this one as an audiobook, I was making excuses to go on drives, go on runs, go on walks so that I can listen to it more, because that's typically when I listen to my audiobooks. And I did get to a point where I was just like sitting on the couch listening because I was so excited to listen to more of it. And I don't normally do that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like that was very telling for me that this was a 5-star book for me. So the next one that I read was Kujo by Stephen King. And that's actually because we'll fast forward in a second, but I also picked up You Like It Darker by Stephen King. And as I was picking that up, which is a set of short stories, I learned that one of the books, Rattlesnakes, or one of the short stories, Rattlesnakes, is a sequel to Kujo. And so I decided to pick up Kujo. And originally or at the very beginning of this book, I was unsure of it because all I know is that it was about a dog who something happens to it and it like goes mad and traps people in a car. So that's all I knew going into it. I didn't really know what to expect, and I really liked it. The beginning again was a little slow. I felt like we weren't really getting into it at first, but I didn't really know what to expect. And so when we were just learning about different families and different people's lives, I was like, oh, okay, I get it, but like, now what? And I really liked the way that everything happened. And I like the book in particular. I heard that the movie, I think it's a movie, not a show, but the movie is a little different. Like the ending specifically is different. And the way that the book ended was just so powerful for me that I liked the book and I'm a little nervous to watch the movie. I felt like once I got the hang of what we were actually reading about and that it was more about these people and just trying to figure out why all of these things were happening, or if there is even a why at all, was really interesting to me too. So it is in a way about a dog who traps people in a car, but there's so much more to it that I can't really even explain, because if I do, then I might give some things away. But I really recommend it if you're looking for like early Stephen King books. I feel like the later novels are a little bit, I don't know, like not as like thriller-y or scary. And this one was just like an older, earlier career book for Stephen King. And I loved it. I really liked this one. It originally was a 4-star for me, but I kept thinking about it and kept thinking about the characters. And so I ended up giving it 5 stars, because if I'm continuing to think about characters, that means it really stuck with me. So I'm gonna skip forward. I read some other books before I finished You Like It Darker, and typically I do these style of videos in the order that I finished my books, but I feel like it makes most sense if I talk about this one next. So again, I read You Like It Darker by Stephen King, and I gave this one 4 stars. I feel like the first chunk of books, I keep calling them books, the first chunk of short stories were amazing. There was like a middle section that I was like, meh, they're fine. And then the last few were really good. And the last one in particular, like, really got me thinking and made me so emotionally sad, and like had me going over to Ryan just being like, this is so sad. And yeah, I feel like even if I don't love every single one of Stephen King's stories, I just feel like every single one of them gets me thinking, and that's what I love so much about them. So I did give it 4-star only because not every single story made me feel that way, but a lot of them did, and I felt like each one had its place, and I really just enjoyed reading every single one. This one did get me into a more thriller type mood, and it got me like watching other thriller TV shows and reading other thriller books. So I really liked this one a lot. But yeah, so I gave it 4 stars. The next one I read was sort of on a whim, but I read Poor Things by Alasdair Gray, and this one was just super random. I went to the library just to peruse, and I found it on the shelf, and I was like, well, I've been wanting to watch this movie, so let me read the book first. And it was really interesting. I gave it 3 stars, and I think it was mostly because I wasn't really sure what to expect from this one, but it was basically a take on Frankenstein. I've seen a lot of people review the movie and talk about, I don't know, like the way that it talks about women, mental health, just disabilities in general. And I'm not really sure if I agree or disagree with a lot of the takes. I think that if you just think about it similar to Frankenstein, it's very similar. If you want to look at it in the light of like disabled people or women's rights or things like that, then you certainly can. But I'm just taking the book at face value, and I feel like it was pretty interesting. It was mostly about this woman who was found dead, and she had been pregnant, and so this man took the baby's brain and put it into the woman's body and created this woman essentially. And the ending was a little vague. Like, I'm pretty sure I understood like that it was just straightforward enough, but if you really wanted to think about it metaphorically, you could, and like think about like, did she know the whole time, or was she like running away from something? That kind of like train of thought you could certainly go down, but otherwise it was just so similar to Frankenstein, where basically he is created and then eventually wants autonomy over his own life, which who doesn't? So it was interesting for sure, but I just felt like I was kind of trudging through a little bit, and I didn't really, I don't know, I think this is just like how I feel about classics in general. Like, it's not something that I'm like dying to pick up, although there were some points where I was like, this is actually really interesting. It is also on the shorter side, so it's a really fast read, but I just basically read a couple of pages per day and I got through it within the month. So I really enjoyed it, and I think it was a little easier to understand than Frankenstein, only because it was written more recently. So it has a little bit more of like the type of English that we would speak today, which is a little easier to read for me. Okay, this next one I feel a little dumb about, but I read The Song of Achilles and I listened to it as an audiobook. I feel dumb about this one because I didn't realize that it is literally just the Iliad retold. And I read those both, the Odyssey and the Iliad, like forever ago, and I just guess I like didn't hold on to a lot of the information. So I did give this one 3 stars, but I felt like it was just like basically told from a different person's perspective. So from Patroclus's perspective. And I felt like it was really interesting. But then once I thought about it a little bit more, like again, I wasn't really like dying to pick it up. And once I just realized that it was a retelling, I just felt like aside from the fact that it was told from a different person's point of view, there wasn't anything extra added for me. Like for example, if there's an artist who is covering a song and the song is just like the same thing except for with the different person's vocals, then it just kind of feels less interesting to me than if someone completely changes the song and makes it their own. And so I just felt like it was more of like a copy versus a like full on like using something as inspiration. So I don't know. I felt like it was interesting. I clearly didn't remember all of the story of the Iliad, so I did like it, but I feel like you really have to be into Greek mythology to really like this book. So I gave it 3 stars. Okay, and the last one that I did give 5 stars was 28 Summers by Ellen Hilderbrand. This is only the second Ellen Hilderbrand book that I've read, and I have had it on my shelf for a little while. I actually got the physical copy from a little free library near me, and I had been putting it off just because it didn't feel like the right time. But I saw a lot of people reading this on like YouTube and things like that, and so I decided finally like, okay, let's just give it a shot, and I loved it. This is basically about a woman who likes this guy, and the guy likes her back, and they decide to every single Labor Day visit each other for however long, which ends up being 28 summers. And it's sort of like a no matter what, we're gonna make this happen, whether we're with somebody else, dating other people, married, have kids, whatever, we're gonna make it happen. And it's just so drama filled, which makes it really intriguing. The way that it's written is so interesting, and the ending really got me. I ended up like sobbing over the ending. It was really sad. So I really loved this one a lot. I think that it was a perfect summer read with a little bit of drama, a little bit of like other stuff sprinkled in, and I just really enjoyed everything that the book had to offer. So I gave this one 5 stars. Okay, so quickly looking at my list, because I didn't read Part of Your World or The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, so I do really want to read those this month. I've been reading 5 Survive, which I started on like the 30th or 31st of July, so I thought I could maybe finish it within the like 2 days that I had started it, but there was no way. So I'm counting this as my first book of August, just because I typically, again, count things by like when I finished them, not when I started them. So 5 Survive is certainly on the list. Summer of Broken Rules I had put on my summer TBR, and I just would really like to read that one as well, especially since we're in the summer time right now. Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, I put that back on the list, as well as Part of Your World. And The Reappearance of Rachel Price. That one is also by Holly Jackson, which is the same author as 5 Survive. I've been wanting to read Reappearance of Rachel Price for a little while, so I'm very excited about that one as well, and I just got it on the Libby app. And then the last one is Too Late by Colleen Hoover. I feel like I have sort of come out of the Colleen Hoover books. Like, I think there's some of Colleen Hoover's books that I still really enjoy and I think are really good stories. Some of them I have really understood from other people's takes on social media as to why they don't think that they're good stories or why they should not be told. I think it's like just very controversial, basically. And I don't disagree with any of those thoughts. It is my book club book this month, though, and it was not my pick. So I am participating in reading it. I am intrigued to see what the story is about. It seems like a little bit more on the thriller side than romance side, so that's intriguing. So we'll see what happens there. I am excited to learn a little bit more, and I will certainly report back, because I do think it's important to talk about anything that maybe is controversial in different books. I just find it important in general. So those are all the books that I'm hoping to read this month. If we get to more, we get to more. We do have 6 on the list, so we do have quite a few, but I am excited to read all of these books throughout this month and see what else we pick up. So thank you guys for watching. Let me know what you guys are reading this month, or what books you read last month, or like what your favorites were. I always love to hear your take on what you're reading and, you know, any thoughts on the books that I've read. That's all I have for you guys for this video. So thank you guys so much again for watching, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.